Ladies and gentlemen, the Trump administration is actually fighting gays and transgenders on cases of where they were discriminated on jobs and even fired. And they just entered a brief with the Supreme Court saying that civil rights don't apply to them. So if the Supreme Court agrees, then many of these jobs can get rid of gays or discriminate against them, and they have no recourse. Right now, they are trying to use the civil rights laws of 1964, which really pertains to other things, not sexual orientation. So they're arguing and fighting against these lawsuits that were filed by gay workers. So the Trump administration Friday filed a brief with the Supreme Court arguing that gay workers are not protected by federal civil rights law. The filing came exactly 1 week after the administration argued the same for transgender workers. And by the way, this is August 23rd, 2019, NBC News. The brief was submitted in combined cases concerning Jarl Bostock, a gay worker fired from his job as a child welfare services worker by Clayton County, Georgia, and the late Donald Zarda, a gay man fired from his job as a skydiving instructor by New York company Altitude Express. The Bostock and Zarda cases are two of three cases concerning LGBTQ worker rights that the Supreme Court is expected to hear this fall. Well, this will be interesting because if the courts don't rule in the favor of gay workers, they're going to have a big problem out here on these jobs. The latest brief submitted by Solicitor General Noel J. Francisco and other Department of Justice attorneys argue that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibit employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, does not bar discrimination because of sexual orientation. Well, back in 1964, the sexual orientation didn't even come up when the time of the Civil Rights Act was even written. That didn't come up back then as one of the reasons for discriminatory practices in the country. It was primarily race was really the big thing. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. I don't know if, when you hear these cases, you don't know how the Supreme Court is going to rule. But you can tell Trump is really not for this, you know, because if you remember, I believe it was his first or second year where he kicked out the transgenders from the military. Remember, he wanted them all gone. So the fact that they filed this briefing with the Supreme Court that says these gay workers are not covered under civil rights, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised. Okay. So an employer thus discriminates because of sex under the Title VII if it treats members of one sex worse than similarly situated members of the other sex. Discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation standalone does not satisfy that standard. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just because they write these laws into place, it doesn't mean they follow them. Because I want you to think about this. The Civil Rights Act has been in place since 1964. They have never stopped discriminating on these jobs. Never, never. And they will protect the person that is being a complete racist on the job than the victim. They'll do absolutely nothing to them. If they can get away with doing nothing, that's exactly what they'll do. And it has not stopped these people from doing all kinds of discriminatory practices on the job just because the civil rights law has been in place since 1964. How many times, even in the case of race, have we heard about nooses being put up on jobs or somebody being openly racist on a job, and these bosses and managers and supervisors see it and they do absolutely nothing? It happens all the time. So the fact that it's happening to gays and other people, no, I'm not surprised. This is America. Okay, you better remember where you are. But no, I mean, really, the time the Civil Rights Act came out, it was gays were not even spoken about back in those times as far as being included in the Civil Rights Act. Okay, the issue of whether sex discrimination in Title VII includes discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity has caused a split in lower courts over the past several years, with some backing gay workers and others, the employers, who have fired them. In addition to the Zarda Bostock cases, the Supreme Court is set to hear RG and GR Harris Funeral Homes versus Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That case concerns Amy Stevens, a transgender woman who was fired from a Detroit funeral home after she informed her employer that she was beginning her transgender transition. The Trump administration filed amicus briefing in the Stevens case August 16th, siding with the employer. Oh, okay. So, you know what? This says right here the Trump administration is not with the gay and LGBTQ community out here. He's not with you. He's actually fighting you in Supreme Court. He got the DOJ fighting against you. So, the Trump administration had already made its position clear on the scope of sex discrimination in the Title VII. In July 2017, the Department of Justice submitted an amicus briefing with the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in the Zarda case, opposing the extension of Title VII discrimination protections on the basis of sexual orientation. And in October 2018, prior to the Supreme Court decision to hear the Stevens case, the Justice Department filed a brief with the High Court siding with the funeral home. In the Stevens case, the federal government is pitted against itself since the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is a defendant in the case. The Supreme Court will hear the case's next term, which begins in October. So there you go. The Trump administration is telling LGBTQ, you don't have a leg to stand on if these companies are discriminating against you and they decide to fire you. You can't use the civil right law of 1964 as a means of arguing your plight to the court. So, look like these employers can do whatever they want, and that's exactly what they are doing when you look at these cases of these folks that are fired. These employers are doing whatever the hell they want to do, and Trump is backing them up. So tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. In my opinion, before everything is said and done, Trump is going to take more and more away from these LGBTQ people out here. It should be obvious by now he's not with these people. As soon as he came forward and talked about getting them all out of the military, I knew where this was headed. So it's no way he's going to hit the military, but he won't hit the civilians on these kind of things. It's very obvious that he will. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.